Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you all children? I hope you all are fine. Today I am going to take up our next topic, that is fractions. Now fractions is not at all a new topic for you all, right? For last 2 to 3 years you all have been studying about fractions. And in today's video we will just recall all that you have learnt in your previous classes, okay. It will be nothing new that you are going to learn, but we will recall all the concepts related to fractions which are already done for you all, okay. And then inshallah we will proceed with the new concepts. So what all we are going to revise today? We will see what is a fraction, we will see what is a numerator, denominator, then we will see what is a proper fraction, improper fraction, mixed fractions, like fractions, unlike fraction, unit fractions and equivalent fractions. All these are already done and you know about them, okay. We will take up the examples and try to recall all these concepts. To start with, what is a fraction? What is a fraction? Fraction is a part of a whole or a part of a collection, okay. Say for example, if you have an apple and you make 4 parts of it, if you are eating one part, okay. Say for example, you have an apple, okay, you are making 4 parts and out of 4 parts you have eaten one part of an apple, okay. So how will you write the fraction for the part that you have eaten? It is 1 by 4, right. So this is a fraction, part of a whole, or it can be a part of a collection also. Say for example, there were say 8 books, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is a collection of books. So there were 8 books. You have finished reading maybe 4 books. From out of 8 you have already read 4 books. So these 4 books you have already finished reading. So how much or how many books out of 8 you have read? You have read 4 out of 8, right. This is also, this is the part of a group, right, part of a group, and this is an example for part of a whole, a group or a collection also we call this. So nothing, fraction is a part of a whole, okay. Now when we write a fraction, there are 2 numbers that we use to write a fraction. One, we write, there is a number which we write above the line and another number we write below the line. The number that we write above the line, we call it numerator. What do we call this? Numerator, okay. And the number that is written below the line, we call it denominator, okay. So numerator and denominator is clear. Same way, 4 is the numerator, 8 is the denominator. Number written above the line, we call it numerator, and number which is written below the line, we call it denominator. Denominator will always tell you the total parts. Total how many? Okay, the denominator. Like here there were 4 parts, right? So total how many parts were there, that denominator will tell you, okay. And how many parts were selected, that the numerator will tell you. The number written above the line will tell you how many parts were selected. Same way here, the total parts, there were 8, total number of books were 8. So the total number, denominator will tell you, and how many parts are selected or how many parts were read, that numerator. Clear? So what is numerator and denominator? I hope it is clear to you all. Fraction is a part of a whole. When we write a fraction, we use 2 numbers to write it. One is written above the line, which we call numerator, and the other number is written below the line, which we call it as a denominator, okay. So fraction, numerator and denominator is done. The next, proper fraction. Now there are different types of fractions, okay, which you have already discussed in your previous classes. Proper fractions, improper fractions and mixed fractions, right. So there are different types of fractions. The first type that we are going to discuss is proper fraction. Now what is a proper fraction? When we have a numerator smaller than the denominator, okay. Now the 2 examples that I have here, these are proper fractions because the numerator is smaller than the denominator. When our numerator is smaller than the denominator, we call those fractions as proper fractions. So, some of the examples for the proper fractions are 2 by 5, 3 by 8, 6 by 9, so on. Okay, there can be any fraction where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. If you find numerator small and denominator greater than the numerator, then it is a proper fraction. Okay. Then next is improper fraction. Okay, proper fraction is done. Next, improper fraction. What is improper fraction? When numerator is greater than the denominator, then that fraction is called improper fraction. For example, say if it is 7 by 4. Now here you see numerator is greater, denominator is smaller, right? So these type of fractions are improper fractions. Okay, say for example 8 by 5 or 9 by 2. Okay, so these type of fractions are improper fractions. Any fraction where numerator is greater and denominator is smaller, we call that fraction as improper fraction. Okay, so proper and improper is clear to you all. Next, mixed fraction. What is a mixed fraction? Mixed, what do I mean by mixed? Mixed fraction means it will be a combination of two things. Okay, the combination here you will find is of a whole number and a proper fraction. Okay, there will be a whole number and there will be a proper fraction together. These type of fractions are called these type of fractions are called mixed fractions. Okay, for example, say 2 1 by 4. Okay, now this is a mixed fraction. We have a whole number 2 and we have a proper fraction. 1 by 4 is a proper fraction. It has to be a proper fraction only. Okay, so a whole number and a proper fraction together make a mixed fraction. Okay, so when we have whole number and proper fraction together, we call that as mixed fraction. For example, 5 1 by 3. It's again a mixed fraction. We have a whole number and a proper fraction. Clear? So whenever you see that a whole number and a proper fraction are written together, we call that fraction as mixed fraction. Okay. Next, we have like fractions. What do we mean by like fractions? Can you just recall what is like fractions? See, like fractions will be a group of fractions. You need at least 2 or more fractions to compare and tell whether they are like or unlike. Okay. So at least 2 fractions you need to have where you will compare both the fractions and see and then you will decide whether it is like or not. Okay. So for example, if we have a fractions like 2 by 5, 3 by 5, 1 by 5, 7 by 5. Okay. Now these type of fractions where denominators are same. You see, in all these 4 fractions the denominators are same. When denominators are same, we call them like fractions. Okay. When we have same denominator in all the fractions, we call them like fractions. So that's why I told you need at least 2 to compare and see the denominators. You can have 2 or more than 2 fractions. Minimum 2 fractions you will need to check whether the denominators are same or not. Okay. If you have 2 or more fractions with the same denominator, we call those fractions as like fractions. Okay. So what is unlike fractions then? If you have fractions with different denominators, okay, opposite of this. Okay, totally opposite to like fractions. Here the denominators are same, but in unlike fractions the denominators will be different. Okay, if you have fractions with different denominators, again you need to have at least 2 fractions to compare and check. Okay, you need to have 2 or more fractions to compare and check whether the denominators are same or not. Okay, so let me give you an example. Say if it is like 2 by 9, 4 by 5, 8 by 3, okay, 6 by 4. You can see here the denominators are different. When denominators are different, we call them unlike fractions. Okay. Here the denominators were same, we call them like fraction. Numerators can be different, no problem, but denominators should be same for like fractions, and in unlike fraction denominators should be different, then only we call them as unlike fractions. Okay. I hope it is clear to you all what is like fractions and what are unlike fractions. Next, unit fractions. Now what are unit fractions? Fractions that have 1 as the numerator. When we have 1 as the numerator, we call that fraction as unit fraction. Okay. Say for example 1 by 2, it is a unit fraction. Okay. Or 1 by 9, 1 by 8, okay, or 1 by 12. All these fractions are unit fractions because they have 1 in the numerator. If you have 1 in the numerator, then that fraction is known as unit fraction. Clear? What is unit fraction? 1 as the numerator. Denominator can be different, any denominator you can have, but if you have 1 in the numerator, then we call that those fractions as unit fractions. Okay. Next, equivalent fractions. Now what are equivalent fraction? What do you mean by equal? Equal, same, isn't it? Now in fractions, we call equivalent fractions to those fractions which will represent the same quantity. Okay. See, in equivalent fraction, the amount that they will represent will be same. Okay, but maybe the number of parts made are different. Okay, let me show you with an example. Say for example, we have 2 apples. Okay, the first apple I will divide it into 4 parts. The second apple I will divide it into 8 parts. Okay, fine. The first apple, only 1 part we will eat, okay, and in the second apple I will eat 2 parts. Okay. Now let us write the fraction for both and see. Fraction for this part, the eaten part in the first apple is 1 by 4, right. Now the fraction that we have eaten in the second apple is 2 by 8. Okay. Have you understood what I have done? The first apple was divided into 4 parts and 1 part was eaten. So the fraction is 1 by 4. In the second example, in the second apple, 8 parts were made and out of 8 parts, 2 parts were eaten. Okay. So the fraction that we get here is 2 by 8. But compare the quantity in both the apples, the eaten part, it is the same quantity which is eaten. Okay, the same quantity of apple is eaten in both the apples. The way we have written the fraction is different because the number of parts made were different, but the quantity that they represent is same. These type of fractions we call them equivalent fractions. Okay, maybe they are written in a different way because of the parts made are different, but they will show or they will represent the same quantity. Okay. So we call them equivalent fraction, equal fractions. Equal fractions because the quantity is same, quantity is equal. Okay, the quantity is equal. Clear? So these type of fractions are called equivalent fractions. We can say that 1 by 4 is equal to 2 by 8. They are equal because the quantity is same. Now how do we find? This is with the help of the pictures, but when we do not have pictures or when we have to just calculate with the numbers, how will you find out equivalent fraction? The method is you have to multiply the numerator and the denominator with the same number. Say for example, I have 1 by 2 as the fraction. Okay. Now if I have to find the equivalent fraction for 1 by 2, I will multiply this numerator and denominator with the same number. Okay, it can be any number, but the numerator and denominator should be multiplied with the same number. Say for example, if I multiply the numerator with 2, I have to multiply the denominator also with 2. I will get a new fraction. When I multiply numerator and denominator with the same number, I will get a new fraction, that is 2 by 4. Okay. Now 2 by 4 is equal to 1 by 2. It will be an equivalent fraction to 1 by 2. Okay. Same way, if I multiply 1 by 2, okay, if I multiply the numerator and denominator with 3, I will get a new fraction, that is 3 by 6. Now 3 by 6 is also equal to 1 by 2. If you go on multiplying this 1 by 2 with different numbers, you will keep getting new fractions. All those fractions are equal to 1 by 2. Okay, if you multiply it with 4, you will get one more fraction. Say for example, let me do one more, 1 by 2, multiply it with 4. You will get 4 by 8. Again 4 by 8 is equal to 1 by 2. So you can say that 1 by 2, 2 by 4, 3 by 6 and 4 by 8 are all equivalent fractions. Okay, they are equal. Okay, so 2 by 4, 3 by 6, 4 by 8 are equivalent fractions of 1 by 2. They will all represent the same quantity. Okay, so I can say that 1 by 2 is equal to 2 by 4 is equal to 3 by 6 is equal to 4 by 8. So all these fractions will be equal to each other. Clear? So equivalent fractions can be found by multiplying numerator and denominator with the same number. Same way, if you have a bigger number, a bigger fraction, you can find the equivalent fraction by dividing numerator and denominator with the same number. Okay, when we will do, inshallah, we will take up a part of this fraction where we will be bringing the fraction to the lowest form. There we will use that step. Okay, inshallah, when we do that I will explain it. For today, remember that when we multiply the numerator and the denominator with the same number, we will get the equivalent fraction. Okay, we can also get it by dividing numerator and denominator, which I will do in our next video, in the coming videos. Okay, I hope it is clear to you all how all that we have already discussed in our previous classes. So quickly we will go on with all that we have done today. We started with fractions. Fraction is nothing but part of a whole or part of a collection. Okay, I have given you two examples for a part of a whole and part of a collection. Then numerator, number that is written above the line, we call it numerator, and the number that is written below the line, we call it denominator. Next, proper fraction. When we have fractions with smaller numerator than the denominator, if denominator is big and numerator is small, we call those fractions as proper fractions. Okay, then improper fractions. Now if we have a fraction where numerator is greater than the denominator, okay, you can see here numerator is big, denominator is small. These type of fractions are called improper fractions. Okay. Next, mixed fractions. Mixed fractions are the combination of whole number and a proper fraction. When both are together, we call them mixed fractions. Like fractions. Fractions that have same denominator. When we have two or more fractions with same denominator, we call them like fractions. When we have two or more fractions with different denominators, we call them unlike fractions. Okay, for example, you can see here 2 by 9, 4 by 5, 3 by 8, all these are unlike fractions because denominators are different. Unit fractions. When we have 1 as a numerator, if we have a fraction whose numerator is 1, then we call it as unit fractions. Equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are the equal fractions. The way we write will be different, but they will represent the same amount or same quantity. And we can get equivalent fractions by multiplying numerator and denominator with the same number. Like I have done here, I have multiplied 1 by 2 with 2, 3, 4 and I have got 3 equivalent fractions for 1 by 2. All these fractions will be equal to each other, they will represent the same quantity. Okay. Keep practicing children, keep revising all that we have discussed today. Inshallah, I'll come with a new concept in fractions in our next video. Till then, stay at home and be safe. Jazakumullahu khaira.